All right, welcome in everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome to our INSET webinar today. We're just going to give folks another minute or so to get started. I see people kind of piling in, so we'll give folks about a minute to get in.
So I will fill the space. I'm Harvey Rosenthal. I'm the CEO here, and many of you I can see are in the Niapras family. So what I can tell you before we start is we're very much hoping to resume having a live conference at, in this case, the Villa Roma, where we were last year, a couple of years ago. And the dates are September 21 to 23, 2020. We'll have a lot more information about that. And Daniela will put the e-news. You can sign up for our e-news and get information about that as well.
All right, great. Thanks, Harvey. So I'm just going to do a little housekeeping real quick before we get into the content for today. So this webinar is being recorded, and you'll be able to get the access to the link to the recording on our website later, probably next week, actually, because of the holiday. We are offering one continuing education credit for social workers. That's LMSWs, LCSWs, CPRPs, and LMHCs. In order to qualify for those CEs, we ask that you're logged in on the webinar platform and not dialed in on the telephone, and you'll receive an evaluation link to the email address that you used to register for today's event. We ask that you return that back to us within 48 hours in order for us to process your CE. And on that form, please just let us know which CE you're looking for. We don't need your license number. So with that, I'm going to just turn it back over to Harvey for introductions.
Thank you, Daniela. And we're so glad we have a nice sized crowd here today. And we're so glad you're with us. You know, the issue of all these issues that are going to be presented in this discussion are at the heart of what Niapras is about. It's about recovery. It's about voluntary engagement. It's about peer support. It's about helping people stay out of any contact with judges in the criminal justice system. It's about helping people feel they have some sort of efficacy and choice and dignity. And you'll hear a bit later about someone. Matthew is here with us today, and Matthew, thank you so much. We also are joined by Charlotte Ostman, the CEO of the Mental Health Association of Westchester, and Ruth Ann Becker, the Senior Vice President of Rehabilitative Services. So I'm going to start off by giving a bit of a backdrop. And Kendra's law is a law that was passed in 1999 following the subway pushing killing of Kendra Webdale by Andrew Goldstein, who was diagnosed with a mental illness. Now, it turned out that Andrew Goldstein was in the system, not resisting treatment, was actually failed by that treatment, wasn't able to get the help he needed. So he wasn't a great example of someone who was trying to avoid services. Nonetheless, the analysis was that we had a lot of people out there that were non-compliant, and that we needed to go to a court-ordered program to get them into treatment. So the law was passed in 1999, and it set up a mechanism by which people would be brought to the attention of a county. They would be sort of essentially investigated, and those people that were thought appropriate were eventually, a treatment plan was drawn up and it was brought to a judge with the person, and 95% of the time, those plans were just automatically accepted and the person was on an order. It's important to talk about who's eligible for this order. You have to be at least 18 years old. You have to be, quote unquote, suffering from a mental illness. You have to be unable to survive safely in the community without supervision. That's a pretty strong standard. I would submit to you that we're not following that standard. It's a little bit, there's a policy, sort of angle to this as well. As you can see, we feel strongly in the need for the kind of things that you're going to hear about today. And so thankfully the MHA and Matthew are here to talk to us about that. But I have to sort of marry it to the idea that we need something better and different than AOT. Anyway, it's supposed to be for people unlikely to survive safely. They have had to have two or more stays in a hospital or correctional facility in the previous 36 months, or engage in one or more acts of threats or actions of serious violent behavior towards self or others within the previous 48 months. And the belief is that they will be unable to voluntarily participate in treatment that will enable them to, him or her, to live safely in the community. And then it ends by saying, and this is what I'm looking at, a court may not issue an AOT order unless it finds that assisted outpatient treatment, which is the Kendra's Law court-ordered outpatient treatment, is the least restrictive alternative, meaning that everything else has to be tried before you go to a court order. And I would submit to you that that's not the case. Then the orders are often used first or not last, we'll say. And not everything is tried. And what we're here today to talk to you about is there are some things that can be tried, that should be tried, that would be in place of even having to talk about a judge and bring in, the criminal justice system into our world. This is about engaging people as far as we're concerned. It's about relationships and the same thing that's always worked: hope, trust, engagement, patience, support, disclosure where appropriate. So we're very much at NIAPRS about choice, but as important, and maybe more so, it's about what's going to help a person who's really struggling. What's going to help them want help, or tell us what kind of help they want and provide that and stick with that. And I think we hear a lot about the downside from a lot of people that we talk with anyway. This idea of reducing everything to non-compliance, as opposed to our failure to engage people, is really critical. Is a critical sort of distinction. A couple of more things. I promise to rush through this. The numbers really tell you about Kendra's Law. There have been 19,328 orders since 1999, half of them in New York City. At the same time in the law, it allowed for something called service enhancements, which is an alternative, a voluntary alternative to the court order. Well, there were 20,000 of those since 1999, so pretty much in the same ballpark. And there was some research done, and it said in the end that people in the program did better, but they also said they weren't able to compare the people that got the voluntary version and the not, which was the whole purpose of the study. We worked at getting the study put in the language of the bill. So we never really got an answer to that. I would submit to you that, what helps people get better, and we submit to you that it's services. It's the right kind of services, the right kinds of relationships, the right kind of engagement, and the fact the person is in the driver's seat. One last thing, almost the last thing. There is an issue of profile. There's a profile pattern here in who gets a court order. And as of this morning, it says that on the website of the Office of Mental Health, 31% of people that have orders are white. 65% of them are Black or Hispanic. And to me, if that doesn't point out a failure to engage, I don't know what does. Mrs. Gunther is apparently not with us. She may join us, and if she does, we will stop and we will acknowledge her. She's really important here. She's been the Assembly Mental Health Committee chair, and throughout her tenure and the tenure of the chairs before her, Kendra's Law is supposed to sunset, which means supposed to either be up for renewal or for termination every 5 years. And what the chairs have done over the years is not move the bill forward, so that it isn't being expanded or made permanent, but it's renewed. And they do that, I think, in part because they want to. It's a very controversial program, and it's a serious sort of removal of people's rights, so that the legislature wants to make sure that it's done right, that it's studied, that there aren't other alternatives. And so that's why folks like Mrs. Gunther, for example, they renew the law, but they don't expand it or make it permanent. And we think that's right. We went to Mrs. Gunther and her staff, and they said at one point to us, "We know you're against the court orders, but what are you for? When you have people that are really struggling and we haven't found a way to reach them, but you don't want a court order, what do you think is appropriate?" So we created this Pierre Bridger model, some years ago, which is just peer support, engaging people into, the kind of life they want, supporting them into life they want. And we said, okay, we're going to come back to Mrs. Gunther with an idea. It'll be peer-led, like Peer Bridger, and it will engage people as to where they are emotionally and in their lives, wherever they're living or what have you. And we're going to come up with a model. And I went to the MHA of Westchester because they had come up with a model of this kind some years ago as well. And so we created something together called INSET, which stands for Immediate, Intensive, and Sustained Support. And we thought that particularly because a lot of the people that are exasperated and want a court order are families who are equally failed by the system. And the idea of providing the family, mainly the person, but if the family is the one that's calling, some sort of immediate, intensive, and sustained support that people, won't get routinely. So the program is unique in that way. It's unique in so many ways. It's peer-led, but it's immediate, intensive, and sustained. And this is not a system that's immediate, intensive, and sustained. So we're very proud together, the MHA and IAPRS, to have designed this program. And you'll hear more about it, but I will give you one headline, which is, I read the criteria of Kendra's Law because that's the criteria that makes you eligible for INSET. So that means by definition, you're a group that's not supposed to be engaged well. But INSET has engaged 80% of the people that they're working with who were deemed to be, I don't know how else to say, the system says hard to serve, hard to engage, this sort of thing. 80% voluntary and peer-led. So that's my long introduction. I apologize if I've pontificated a little too long there. And I want to sort of give an opportunity for the MHA to start with a presentation, and we'll bring Matthew in, and I'll be saying things as well. Again, INSET stands for immediate. It's not it's a corruption of the intention to say immediate, intensive, and sustained support. We kind of made that up. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to Charlotte, I think, the CEO of the MHA Westchester.
Thank you, Harvey. Thank you so much for inviting us today to speak about this program. As you know, we're very passionate about it. Harvey came to us, it's probably about 4.5 years ago now, talking about this alternative to Kendra's Law and his vision and his dedication to building and establishing an alternative that could hopefully be replicated, not only across the state, but hopefully across the country. And we were excited to engage in that. And Ruth Ann and I worked together with some of the other staff at MHA to put together INSET. And we had a program, but we needed to pay for it. And it's due to the ongoing financial and other support that Assemblywoman Gunther has provided that has allowed us to build this. And I'll tell you why it's so important. First, I'm going to talk a little bit about the funding of the program, and then I'm going to talk about the program, why I think it's so successful. The ability to fund a program that could be a pilot and establish some data that we could then show about positive outcomes for people is very hard to do in the current system. Right now, the way that we operate is we really can only do the kind of work that we can get paid for by and large. Not-for-profit organizations have a pretty small margin. Many of them run in the red, and it's hard to do new things, particularly things that you will not be reimbursed for at all. And sadly, at the time we started this, peer services were not something that were reimbursable under any behavioral health program that's funded by OMH, at least any that we operated. And so we looked to Assemblywoman Gunther, and she was supportive. Harvey used a word, relationships, when he was talking about how you engage people. And that, to me, is the crux of what INSET is about. we don't want to fit people into pre-existing boxes, into created mandates, into pathways that are built so that they can be reimbursed. What we want to do is we want to create an individualized opportunity for each and every person to give them the support that they need, when they need, where they need it, and how they need it. And to be able to do that, we needed some open-ended funding. I mentioned peer support. So it's very important to Harvey and very important to us that this was a peer-led and a peer-operated program, because we feel that those relationships are so important. You'll hear later from someone who's benefited from our program, how developing a relationship before just trying to get people into a traditional service is more helpful. And I certainly believe that. I don't think anybody, whether it's a diet, whether it's a health regimen, an exercise regimen, no matter what it is, nobody does well with a mandate. Everything that we do that is forced upon us doesn't feel good, and it doesn't feel motivating, I don't think, for anyone. And so having somebody come in, maybe every day, maybe for several hours a day, working with several different members of the family or the other support systems that the person has. Again, those things aren't traditionally supported under our current billing structure, but they are key in engaging people and allowing them to establish those relationships that build trust, understanding, and respect for a human being and what's going to help them be the best person that they can be, to set their own goals and to set a pathway to reach those goals. And so being able to do that, I think, has helped a tremendous number of people. And we've done so well that we've been able to think about expanding it to other areas in our region. And we have tremendous support, because from one aspect, you have the families who have the support and friends and community members who see that somebody is getting what they need, not just, okay, we're gonna try to get your trust so that we can get you into a clinical program or get you on medicine or make you fit into this box or that box. Not everybody wants medicine, not everybody needs medicine. And you'll hear story after story from people how they're given the wrong medicine or a medicine that actually hurts them and rather than helps them. And so doing these things, putting together these treatment plans, again, in a vacuum, without the input and the buy-in and the motivation of the person who's actually supposed to benefit from them, doesn't make a whole lot of sense to us. So there we embarked. I think, again, being able to go out to somebody every single day for weeks, for months, for years, if need be, and adjusting the frequency, the duration, the intensity of the support over an extended period of time, depending on what the person needs, is the flexibility that is needed in order to really, truly support people in reality, rather than saying you have a 45-minute clinic session once a week, you have an injectable medication once a month. Those things are institutional. They are not reality-based. And if one thing comes out of the pandemic that is a silver lining, I hope it is the recognition that there but for the grace of God go I. Any of us can, at a moment's notice, have our lives changed and be in a situation where we need support that's unique and tailored to us, and that is best provided by other people who've been down that same path, who understand the perspective. And so you think you can pontificate, Harvey. I certainly can as well. So I'm not going to.
And the only reason I think you're right to point that out, because this is an hour work webinar, so it's going to be over in a half an hour. So
yeah. So
I used up too much, and I apologize.
No.
Go ahead.
I want to lay the groundwork again for the value system and the motivation for us to do this. But I do want to turn it over to Ruth Ann and ultimately Matt, what the program looks like better on the ground. And I'd also really love to be able to answer people's questions, because I think a dialogue about how other people might be able to start to build something like this, or how we can help people promote this so that it does expand, I think would be most beneficial. So Ruth Ann is the Vice President of Rehabilitative Services. As Harvey said, she also oversees INSET program staff. And I want to speak for her, but she has plenty of personal experience with mental health in her own family. And so I think she speaks from a perspective of understanding.
Thanks, Charlotte. And I also remember our first meeting when we started to talk about INSET. And I remember being in a very bad place in my own life. I have a son with mental health issues, and I was so intrigued by what Harvey was sort of laying out, because all of these thoughts had been going through my head. I always have had this push and pull of like, oh, I wish someone could come in and swoop in and make this better and make him do the things that I know would be helpful. And then of course that has never worked. It's never worked in my own life, and it certainly wasn't going to work in my son's life. And so to think that I could be helping to craft or create a different approach, not only with the person in question, but the family, was extremely exciting. And I will talk a little bit about how challenging it has been to engage families into this process as one of the things that we continue to be challenged by. But I think, as a spokesperson for INSET, it's one of the things that I can bring a lot of, passion to because of my own experience. And that, we often, unfortunately, meet people when they are already estranged from their families and are unwilling to have their family be part of this conversation, because it has gotten to a point where it is so, adversarial that they can't, the person that we're working with is not communicating with their families. And so we have seen, as people have progressed through INSET, a willingness of people to re-engage with their family. And that's been one of the truly wonderful benefits of this program. We talk a lot about engagement in this model. And I'm sure people will have a lot of questions. One of the things, and I already see some of the questions are coming in about how you afford this. And again, as Charlotte described, because it's a grant program, we do have some more flexibility to really spend some time in what Harvey and I often refer to as voluntary but persistent. We are very persistent in our engagement with people. And we know people's first instinct is to say no, because they often don't trust that, trust the system. We are seen as the system, even though, we identify as people with lived experience, as peers, as trained peers often. But people will tell me all the time, they've heard this before. I see, again, I'm seeing questions come up, so we're going to be happy to share all kinds of information, but I didn't want to sit here with a PowerPoint and say, next slide. So, but we will, I can certainly share a PowerPoint related to it.
Maybe I can look at their questions, but why don't I ask a couple too? And I know we wanted to make it conversational. You still want to? So we start out by saying most of the people that you work with meet the Kendall's Law criteria that we talked about at the outset. Where do you typically meet them? Where do the referrals come from?
Yeah, so we have a relationship with DCMH. And often
that's the county mental health department?
Yes, the Department of Community Mental Health in Westchester, and we are developing those relationships in the other counties that we're expanding to. And so that they can see us as a place to refer people prior to moving forward with an AOT order. And we have received several referrals that way. However, we also, we definitely market the program. People know about this program. One of the things that over the last 6 months that has increased, and again, a lot of the time is because of word of mouth, is that there is someone on an ACT team who is struggling. They are concerned about that person. They need additional support, and this allows us, to establish a relationship with somebody. And so we're getting a lot of referrals from ACT teams as well as clinicians. We certainly talk a lot about it in every team meeting at MHA about, does this person meet the criteria? Would they benefit from this? Would they be open to being approached by this? Referrals come from them, people know somebody, that self-referrals. We have had a few family members, but again, it's mostly from sort of the more traditional community mental health systems that know that there might be a way to connect someone to a pretty unique kind of service.
So in terms of actual settings, where do you get a call from one of those sources? And I know I don't know if you're 24/7, but you're pretty available.
Yeah.
So you can explain that and just say, when you do get contact, or could the people be on the street? Could they be living with a family and coming out of prison, hospital?
All kinds of settings. People are in all kinds of settings. We really try to contact someone within 24 hours, or if not sooner. Some of the challenges have been bad phone numbers, bad information, and we have to take some time to really track down the person's contact information. It is a little bit of an unusual approach again, right? Because a person may be seen as someone who's struggling and meet the criteria for AOT, and getting permission to be able to reach out to that person can take some time. We want to make sure that we're not overstepping our bounds, but we want the person to know we're available and how would be the best way to connect with them. I do have a staff member, Betty, who Matthew will probably mention and when he's speaking, who also has a relationship with a lot of the drop-in shelters in Westchester County, particularly in Yonkers. And she just takes some time to sit on a wall outside with a cup of coffee and some brochures about who we are and what we do. People approach her all the time. She often will refer to other programs if the person isn't eligible for ours, but we're out in the streets, we're in drop-in shelters, we're on the phone, we're in cars, we're very mobile, and we'll try to get to someone as quickly as possible. We have found that most of the people that we are working with are housed, but not happily housed. So that is often a place in which we need to start with somebody, and is a way that we can help someone, to engage with us, which is helping them either get connected to whatever housing opportunities are available.
So when you get the call, I think somebody's asking about the staffing model. Who is INSET? What is the team like, and who does what? And
Currently, I have 2 full-time staff and 2 part-time staff. And again, there's a need for part-time staff because we need to cover weekends and evenings and be really available. That's my current, staffing at this moment. Obviously, as Charlotte mentioned, we're expanding, so we will, increase our staffing as well. Everybody on that team is either provisionally certified as a peer, or has received peer. Some also have their SERPRA certification as well. So it's an experienced team, but it's a team that really ranges. It's diverse in its age and its ethnicity and its race. But they often sort of move around the county together or in partners with each other, because we don't know who someone's going to connect to. and we don't want to make any assumptions. And so that piece of who they meet first is sometimes by who's available at that particular moment, but we really try to be thoughtful about, giving some people some options of who they might be able to connect to. One of the things that I want to make sure that I get in here, because I know our time is running pretty quickly, and also I want to allow Matthew to have a few minutes to talk about his experience, is that we set up a system in our electronic health record to be able to keep people in what we call pending status. And those of you who are familiar with electronic health records will understand we don't enroll someone right away, but we do want a place where we can all be communicating with each other and pulling in different people to communicate. But we know that often if we approach people and come with all the paperwork it takes to quote unquote open someone in our system, it will immediately be a turnoff. So we're talking, it could take 60, 90 days until paperwork is completed. But we get enough demographic information to be able to, quote unquote, enroll that person. So I always have a large group of people pending, and in other programs, I would be concerned about that. But for this program, that's exactly the point. Yeah. We have to keep going back to people, finding them again, talking them again, because I never know when's the right moment. When will this person want to connect with us? And how can we be that person, to help them connect? So that's a really important feature. And again, it speaks to the flexibility I have as an administrator of this program to be able to continue to work with somebody who I feel, and the team feels, quite frankly, we just haven't captured them at the right moment, or we just haven't captured them with the right thing that's going to connect to them.
So I'm going to ask a couple of real quick, lightning round specific. I did go too long, and I apologize to everybody. So you have 2 full-timers and 2 half-timers, and with the money that's coming in, Mrs. Gunther refunded the program first $500,000, and now again another $500,000. How do you see the program in terms of staffing? What's your ideal, within reason, your staffing?
Well, we are going to expand to Rockland, Orange, and Sullivan County. My current Westchester team will work with Rockland County at this point, unless we are get to a point. Again, we're trying to keep people work with about 20 people at one time, and they're in the various sort of stages of engagement and working with it. With this type of program, I don't see that we would necessarily be able to work with more people. So I don't really know the numbers yet, with Rockland, and if we need to, we'll be able to hire additional staff. We are planning for another 1.5 staff people to get started, but ultimately 2 additional staff people in for Orange and Sullivan counties. And so we've already started to develop our relationships there, identify staff. We're moving along.
Is the staff only peers? I mean, at one point you don't have any case managers or any.
We do have a case manager who is a peer, a certified peer.
Got it. So they do some of the coordination and.
Yeah. And she is instrumental in supporting not only the people that she works with directly, but the other staff members who may not have as many years of experience doing some type of care management. And if if the care management needs become such that we need additional support, obviously we would link somebody to care management services. Or I see someone has asked a question about HCBS to HCBS if they were eligible. So we have some options if someone needs, and that way it allows us to really focus on the engagement and helping people to really start to envision a life for themselves, and whatever that means for them.
So I think it's great that you keep the meter running. They're on the, they're with you. You don't have a limited time where if you don't engage them or vice versa, you discharge them. They're with you, and you take the time necessary, whatever that takes. But on the other end, is there some other side where they move on, or you stop working with them, or are they always available to come back? I mean, what's the outcome on the other side?
We often, not often, but I would say that most people are still working with us. In fact, when I look at the data, I'm like, oh, we started working with this person in 2019 and they have X amount of days, that they have not been in the hospital. It's like, oh, now it's really getting like years. It's like, which is great. It's great to be able to follow someone and really see their recovery. I mean, we see their recovery, which is, absolutely amazing. But no, we don't have any hard and fast rules about you have to stay, you don't have to stay, you can come back and forth. It's very, very, very flexible because we know people's lives change. We do, support people often when they're going to court around their AOT. And often if they, if that is removed or they're stepped down at some point, they may think to themselves, I don't really need the services, you've connected me. That's a real success for us. So we don't really put any limitations or have a hard and fast rule. I just wanted to be able to introduce Matthew, who's a participant in our INSET program, because I know he has to step away early from this meeting. So would it be okay if we just shift gears and I could introduce Matthew?
Sure, please.
Okay. So Matthew has been involved with INSET for some time and has a very strong connection to our program, and is one of those folks, again, that we've been able to just see the growth and the recovery. Like, it's been an amazing experience to be able to be part of that journey with Matthew. But I'm gonna turn it over to Matthew so he could tell a little bit about himself and about his experience with INSET.
Hi, yeah. And by the way, I could stay a little long. I could stay longer if it isn't, the help for this webinar and the.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I've been through so much, and I think the word that stands out for me is recovery. Recovery, and what ways recovery works. Because when we are in relationship with someone else while we are going through a disorder, it also affects how in our minds we think about ourselves, and whether we believe in ourselves and believe that a disorder, something that is called a disorder, can actually become a gift. And that's something that I have experienced firsthand. Diagnosed as schizoaffective, there was a point where I started hearing voices, but eventually now I don't hear negative voices. I hear people I know. I hear support. It's all positive. And I talk to my psychiatrist, and he says it actually sounds more like your mind is creating coping. You're using your imagination to create coping skills to help you keep moving forward. And I would use that in group therapy to help other people. And what allowed me to do that, to turn my disorder into something that is so powerful, is the nature of what INSET is, the nature of what MHA is. That in INSET, I work with Betty. She comes to me, she understands me. She doesn't put me in a box. She treats me like a human being. She believes in the possibilities. She believes, and we've become best friends. And that I was at one point put on AOT when I was struggling. And I remember, as I said before, I put up a huge wall. And I didn't only put up a huge wall to medication, but I put up a huge wall in my head, that I I'm unwilling to accept, like I was even more unwilling to accept that I needed help because of the AOT mandate. When I heard them say, I also have a rare condition that's not mental health associated, but it does affect the brain, but it isn't mental health associated. And I remember being in court and having them say they don't think it's because of my rare condition. They think it's because of schizoaffective disorder. And I remember putting up a huge wall. And then things just spiraled out of control from there. And that's what I talked about, like the wall that I put up in my own mind, how I just, after being put on AOT and having that experience, I just spiraled way out of control. And this is before I found MHA and INSET, years before.
So Matthew, how was your life different? How was what are you doing differently, and how was INSET supporting that?
Well, INSET supports me by, helping me see the things that I can do. Betty doesn't come and tell me what I can't do, or like what my illness is telling me that I am unable to do. She helps show me what I can do. And that's a huge part of my recovery. I began to work out again. I began to go on walks again. I'm a musician, I began to just, like engage in therapy groups in MHA, and by believing what I can do, I come up with really good topics to bring in the groups. And I only say that because the other people in the group said that it was a really great topic that I brought up, and it helped them a lot. And that mentality of INSET supporting me, talking to me about what I can do rather than what I cannot do, is what is really that's the way it's supposed to be. Before MHA INSET, it was all about what I'm unable to do, in the hospitals and AOT, like what you're not allowed to do. And I think that it's most important to talk about what we can do rather than what we cannot do.
I really want to thank you amazingly that we really got so much in there in a little bit of time, and in a very moving way to me anyway. I appreciate what you've said, and I know that prior to the program, you had been in and out of hospital a number of times, and it sounds like you're not at this point.
No, I haven't been in the hospital for 4 years.
Man, oh man, that's great. That's really wonderful. So let's sit tight, Matthew. Now, I'm just going to say, because I started late, I don't have a problem staying later. I don't know if Daniela does or the rest of you do, but I'll hang around as long as if people want to. But I want to maybe ask one of the questions. I don't know, Charlotte, or then if you know this, but since you're working with people that might otherwise be on orders, do you know from the county whether they're imposing less orders on people?
I do not, Harvey, but that's certainly something that I can find out about. And one of the things that occurs to me as we're sitting here today is that there's an awful lot to talk about regarding this program. And I'm very excited that other people have this level of interest in knowing more about it and how they might access it or how they might replicate it. And so I'm just going to make a plug, Harvey, that maybe we need to have a part two or something like that. So Sarah Savidio, who's from our county Department of Community Mental Health in Westchester, said that since COVID started, the AOT orders sadly have doubled.
No.
So that's interesting to note. But it would be interesting to note how many, if there was any impact from INSET as to like how much worse it could have funded. It's hard to prove what you don't know, you know.
Why don't we invite Sarah? Sarah, if you will, why don't we have you on part 2? And that would be great from a county point of view, how it's working and how you see the program. Let's look at other questions and comments here. You're getting a lot of props, Matthew, here, I see.
Yeah.
An expansion in Putnam,
So Harvey, we should tell people that we are working, and our model, at least for right now, for expansion is that we are going to be engaging with at least one other peer agency to help us lift up this in some different geography in Orange and Sullivan County. And we are very close to Putnam County. So I'm just going to speak for Ruth Ann and say that if there was somebody from Putnam and we could get to them, absolutely, we would service them. We do have a little bit of a footprint there. And, you know, we're very frugal and judicious with the money, but, you know, we want to help anybody that we can. And we have enjoyed a very positive relationship with the county departments who have helped identify not only people who would benefit from this, but projected certain needs in certain areas. And, you know, I can't emphasize enough for the folks who are paying for services, whether it's taxpayer dollars or some other kind of insurance company. We haven't shared them today in black and white, but we have very stunning data about the amount of money and the kind of impact, positive health impact and outcomes around employment, housing, reducing hospitalizations, coming off of AOT orders. All of those things add up to not only greater quality of life for individuals, but money saved. And that's something that we all have to be mindful as the need grows for mental health support. And I'm happy. I saw a couple of people asking about, how do you pay for this? And I'm happy to talk about, if you want me to, Harvey, some ideas that we have about sustainability as we.
Sure.
So the idea is that particularly for people who are members of Medicaid managed care organizations, our thought is that members who are utilizing a lot of services, not only because of their mental health needs, but because people often have comorbid health conditions that land them in the hospital, or other high ticket items because of their lack of self-care or connection to healthcare. We believe that we can go to managed care organizations and say, identify your members that are falling into this category and pay us a PMPM, a per member per month payment, or pay us a bundled payment for an episodic period of time, so that we can help establish a relationship and to help get this person on a different track. One of the things that Matt said that echoes with me even now is, showing people what they can do. He kept saying, not what we can't do. And I kept thinking in my head, not what you must do, what you can do, not what you must do, giving people options. And so having that opportunity to have that kind of funding would revolutionize the delivery of behavioral health care in not only in our neighborhood, but in our country. If we thought about it as an episode of care, just like a hip replacement or recovery from some other healthcare occurrence, like delivering of a baby or something like that. So those kinds of things are the conversations that I think that we need to have on that side of the table. I very much believe in the mission and the values, but my charge is to make sure that we find a way to pay for this so that other people can get this available for the people in their neighborhood.
The key you're saying there is the flexibility of the funding. You're able to do what you need to do for the people and not meet all these criterias. And I think a big one is really not having to tell people if they don't show up or see the doctor, you're gonna have to discharge them, that you continue working with them where they are. There's another county rep, or maybe you answered that question, because we're lucky here. Again, we went to Mrs. Gunther and she has funded this a couple of times, but there is no OMH funding stream for this at this moment. Maybe there should be, and we'll take that up with them.
Harvey, I just wanted to add that in the PowerPoint presentation that I'm happy to share with people, we do give examples and what kinds of cost savings come from a program like INSET. So just real briefly, there's an example where we started working with someone in December of 2018. Prior to her working with us, within 8 months, she had 5 inpatient hospitalizations totaling 82 days. And numerous ER visits. And once she engaged with us, she has not been in the hospital. And my data goes up to April of 2021, in the 26 months between starting with us in 2018. And we were able to do some research. That inpatient cost savings is $230,666. So you can see just, a program like this can really have a serious impact on funds that are being, paid out to hospitals and ERs.
So if a plan saw it that way and saw the savings, they'd be more than happy, you would think, to pay you for what you do and how you do it.
Yeah, I'm getting questions about the PowerPoint. I will send that.
We're getting Danielle is going to give us we have your email addresses, and yes, we will send it to you. The number that I talk the most about, and I've mentioned this to the lead people at SAMHSA and to people really around the country, is this is a program that works with people who otherwise would get a court order and are deemed to be the unengageable. And this is a program that has engaged 80% of 139, meaning 113 people out of 139 have signed up, have been engaged, have stayed with the program. People who shouldn't have, by definition, were non-compliant or unengageable, or all these terms, hard to serve and all that. Well, if they're hard to serve because we have the hard time. We haven't figured out how to do it, and they're figuring it out here in the INSET program. Forgive me here. So we have the PowerPoint to send you. We are going to do a part 2, it sounds like. And Matthew, I really want to thank you. You really just made this happen. I've never heard you speak before. That was really fabulous.
Oh, thank you very much. If you want me to say any more, I can. Otherwise, I do have a Zoom meeting.
Yeah, no, we'll bring you back for part 2.
Okay.
Okay.
Well,
Thanks,
it was
Matt.
really nice to be with all of you, and thank you.
Thank you,
for
having
Matthew.
me.
Thank you.
So I guess we're going to have to jump off. I will, I don't know, Danielle, I'll hang around for a couple of minutes if people have more questions, but I don't know if that's kosher.
I'm fine, Harvey.
You're
Yeah.
fine?
We can
Okay.
hang out for a few more minutes.
Yeah, well, I did all my politics there. I took too long.
Okay. Okay, I'm gonna go now. So
Okay,
thank you.
Matthew.
Bye, thanks, Matthew.
Thank
Bye.
you.
No problem.
Looks like people are leaving. Any other questions?
There was one question in the chat. If you guys could talk about experiences supporting people who are leaving prison through INSET.
That's right.
Yeah. Again, as soon as we can connect with somebody, depending on whether or not they've given approval for someone to connect with them, we can. Sometimes in that situation, it could be a family member who reaches out to us and lets us know someone's coming. We might be connecting with them, and then they introduce us. But unfortunately, we do have people who go into the shelter and are identified as being eligible for this program. They meet the criteria. I don't think our approach is particularly different, but just, one of the things that Matthew and I talk about all the time, and about why INSET worked for him and why it works for some of the other people in our program, is that we really are trying to listen at that thing that the person needs. what they need and how we can help them with sort of the most immediate needs. It could be food, it could be shelter, and showing them that we're going to hang in there and show up and be able to help them through that. Sometimes gives us like a leg in. And so that's how we might just meet with someone and say, what are your immediate needs right now? What's something I can help you with today? And that like immediate today, is sort of like, that's what we're like, wow, yeah, today I need a toothbrush, I need toiletries, or I need to get to DSS, or, those kinds of things. And I think our real sort of genuine attempts to help them might sometimes allows us to connect with somebody.
I remember seeing a question from Anna Maria Lewison about staffing model, but I can't find it right now. But I guess if we covered that, let me give it back to you and see if we got it right. You have 2 full-timers and 2 half-timers, and on average, a full-timer works with 20 people.
Yes. Yeah. And we do have a program director who is out on maternity leave at the moment. So I'm functioning in that position, but we do have a part-time, I mean, she works with other programs as well, but
Gotcha.
she oversees this program, and she's our director of integrated services. And we thought it fit, it was a nice fit for her because she really she has a sense of all the different programs at the agency and who could really benefit from this program. And so she's able to really introduce it that way. So that's something, important as a staffing model, I think, is having, as I said before, the right staff, the right mix of staff, but also leadership that is going to be really flexible and open and not take no for an answer. And she doesn't. And she talks about INSET very, very passionately. Because she really believes in it, as we all do. So it's important to have some type of leadership. This program requires supervision in that it's not, there's no guidebook, there's no, like we're making up a lot of the rules as we go, and we want to make sure we're being thoughtful about those rules and responsible and, following, rules.
So yeah, people are asking, is it just Westchester and upstate? It is only because Mrs. Gunther's staff asked us for an alternative, and she's in the Hudson Valley, and she's takes care of her counties.
So Harvey, if you wouldn't mind, I just recalled seeing a question about if services are available outside of the Westchester region by telehealth. And it's interesting because we had, certainly we have done all of our services under a hybrid model since the beginning of the pandemic. But I would say that for INSET, my vision has always been sitting next to a person, being in the room with a person, being in close proximity, because I think that that's really important in terms of nurturing the relationship. However, I am somebody who's all about utilizing technology and innovation. And so I'm gonna digest that a little bit and think about what the possibilities might be for something like that. Again, depending on what can be paid for and what's realistic. The other thing I think that concerns me about that is just the nature of crisis. And that sometimes it may be difficult to manage crisis and deploy crisis services outside of our area, just because of the knowledge base of the people who are doing the work. So I just want to think some of those things through, but it's an interesting idea. And I also know that you and I both feel strongly that this is something that should be available everywhere, because mandate is not a word that goes well with relationships. So as we're trying to engage people and get them help, we want an alternative to the mandate.
Well, first of all, that if we had to end now, mandate, relationship over mandate, you couldn't have said any better, Charlotte. That's really the core here. Let's just see, last one. Is this Sarah? I would love to see INSET utilize more instead of AOT for individuals leaving the prison system.
Call me,
county-
Sarah.
Yeah.
County AOT.
We're ready. Call
What
me.
do you say? Well, let's talk systemically. Westchester's been a pretty progressive county. Maybe we can figure that out. But we'll come back and do a part 2. This is, to us, we're very excited about it, not just because the folks like Matthew are being supported, but frankly, it makes the case that the relationship and engagement, it's working with the person, it's sending a peer out. These are the things that far more powerful than forcing someone into a system, a life, and medications that they're not choosing, and that may not work for them. So, well, thank you very much. Thank you, Charlotte, so much, and for your support, and Ruth Ann for your work and your sharing, and also your personal sharing today. It was very touching to me. And of course, to Matthew and Daniela. So thank you. We'll be sending you the PowerPoint, and look for a part 2 because we'll be back. Okay. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Harvey.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Harvey.
Ruth Ann.